Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Everyday Tactical Vids. And in today's video, I want to share with you my top 5 survival items and why I chose them. 2 introductory notes as we start off here. First is I'm thinking about a wilderness survival situation. So these products, these items, they'd be different if it was an urban survival situation. The second thing is I'm picking these items based on where I live, which is the northeast of the United States of America. So if I lived in Arizona or India or in the Bahamas, I'd probably pick different items. But these are the items I would pick based on my environment and my location. So what I'm gonna do is start at number 5 and then work up to number 1. My number 5 item is a knife. Obviously, a tool that can make other items is a huge advantage when you're in a survival situation. So a good solid knife you can carve with, you can make a spear with, you can make a frog gig or a fish gig with it. It helps you to chop down branches that you might want to use for a base layer so you have something to lay on at night. Obviously, a good, solid, full tang knife is my preference. This is the SE6, which is an excellent knife. It's one of my favorites. And one of the things you'll see in this video is that I try to think about what's most important for my environment, but also what's the hardest thing to make. So yes, you can make a cutting tool out in the wild, but it takes a lot more effort and you gotta just stumble upon, the right stones or the right type of materials in order to make that knife. So that's why bringing a knife, and a good solid knife, is definitely a win in a survival situation. One thing I found is that when I'm out in the woods working on survival skills, just practicing and honing in my craft, a knife is important, but when it comes to actually staying alive in the woods, it's not something I go to immediately. Again, it's a helpful tool, but I don't have to have a knife in order to put up a tarp if I have a tarp. I don't have to have a knife in order to gather water. It is a good tool to have for a variety of different uses, but in my experience, while it's in the top 5, it's definitely not going to be the number 1 thing for me based on where I live. My top pick for a survival knife as of fall 2019 is the SE Hungless. Kind of appropriate, I'm sitting next to the stream as I talk about number 4, which is a good water filter. So this is the Sawyer mini water filter, and then I also have a Life Straw here. Now, the reason I chose a water filter system, and there are other ones out there, the reason I chose something like this as opposed to like a pot or something to boil water in is that this is instant water for me if I have a source that's not filled with all kinds of chemicals. So this stream right here is clean to drink out of if I get the Giardia and the Cryptosporidium, etc. out of it. And so with a Sawyer mini water filter or a Life Straw, I can do that really easily. One thing I always try to encourage people is that the rule of 3s is helpful to remember. Like, you need water within 3 days or you're likely to go into a really bad health situation. But you don't feel the effects at day 2 and 23 hours. You feel the effects very quickly, especially if you're exerting yourself, if you're stressed out. Dehydration and the impacts of it can happen really quickly. So I want to get water in my system as quickly as I can. And so having something like this where maybe I can't transport water as easily as if I had like a water bottle, but this gives me the opportunity to get water and to get it quickly and to drink basically as much as I can when I'm near my water source. My top pick for water filter as of fall 2019 is the Sawyer mini water filter. So number 5 is a knife, number 4 is a water filter. Here's a look at number 3. In a real life survival scenario, when you're out in the woods, the goal is to get found and to get out alive. And so one of the ways you can do that is by not using a lot of calories and by staying warm, and a good sleeping bag will do that. Now that bag I just showed you is from LL Bean. It's a minus 15 degree Fahrenheit bag. I've had it for years. The challenge of a bag that's gonna be that warm is that there's a lot of down or fill in it in order to give you that warmth. And therefore, even if you compress it, it's still gonna be pretty big. So there's always this cost-benefit analysis of what's the weather out like, if I got lost or if I was having to stay overnight, what's the lightest weight bag I could have, but it would still actually keep me warm. There's lots of different options out there, so you gotta figure out what works best for you. The reason I mentioned the sleeping bag is because if I can get something covering me and then maybe I'm injured or maybe I'm just waiting to be found, I can at least hunker down and stay warm. If I can sleep through the night, that's a huge deal. If you've ever tried a survival scenario just for practice and testing your skills without putting yourself in danger, obviously, you'll know that sleep is hard to get sometimes. And so having a good sleeping bag that'll keep you warm to give you rest during the night will get you ready and you're energized for the next day when you gotta get back at the idea of staying alive. Here's another option. This is from 5 Star Gear. It's called a Whoobie, and basically you can zip it into the form of a sleeping bag so you can kind of climb into it at night, but you can also wear it like a piece of clothing, so if you're out and about doing a couple of things, it's another layer of warmth. You're not going to get as much warmth out of something like this as opposed to a full down sleeping bag, but it does give you a more compact and lightweight option. My top pick for sleeping bag as of fall 2019 is the one I showed you. It's my LL Bean minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit down sleeping bag. My number 2 item is some sort of shelter. So I've used this one and I like it a lot. It's the Sport Utility Blanket from SOL. The cool thing about this is that you can see it has that reflective undercoating, and so it's going to reflect radiant heat back to you if you're there at night. So just imagine you get a tarp set up so you keep the rain and the weather off you. You have a sleeping bag, you can climb in there and you can hunker down and stay pretty warm. There are a lot of different options out there when it comes to tarps. This one's from BattleBox. This is 12 by 9 feet 6 inches. You can certainly just go to your average big box store and get one for $5 or $6. I think you actually can pick them up at like Ocean State Job Lot for as little as $3 for a 4x6 tarp. But keeping that weather off you makes a huge difference. The other thing I think can be underrated about a tarp is that when you set it up, you've got a home base. You've got a place you can come back to. And if you're in a real wilderness survival situation, the fact that you're saying, okay, that's home, that's the place I keep coming back to, that gives me kind of a foundation from which I can operate. Mentally, that really does help a lot. My top pick for shelter as of fall 2019 is the one I showed to you. It's the SOL Sport Utility Blanket. So we've got for number 5, a knife. For number 4, we have some sort of water filtration system. For number 3, a sleeping bag. Number 2 is something to make a shelter out of. In my example, it was a tarp. And the number 1 survival item for me, where I live, is going to be some sort of way to get fire started. So here's a large fire steel. We've also got a Nano Striker XL from Exotac. And then here's just one of those cheaper ones that you can pick up at a store. So why would I say fire is my most important survival item? Well, I have a separate video coming out soon that's going to go more in depth about 10 reasons why I think fire is the most important item to have in a survival scenario based on where I live. But let me kind of give you a high level thought on it. First off, let me say I don't think a fire steel is the only way to go. Some people prefer a Bic lighter. I do want to say this though, if you're a person going out there and saying in any survival scenario, I'm going to make fire using primitive skills, meaning a bow drill, a hand drill, something like that, that puts you in a pretty precarious situation, even if you have a good skill set, because in a survival scenario, maybe you're lost, you're injured, maybe you're lost and injured. It's really stressful. Maybe it's nighttime, maybe it's wet, it's raining, it's snowing. There's a lot of factors that you have to keep in mind. And so having a way that you can start fire consistently with an outside product that you brought in, that's a really big deal to me. Fire gives me warmth. Fire gives me something so people can locate me, especially at night. They can see a fire and say, hey, that's where somebody is, or that person is who was lost. There's lots of reasons why fire matters, but in particular, if I'm all about saving calories and staying warm, even if the weather isn't great, I can build a really big fire and that'll help keep me warm. And it's easier for me to make a fire and then generally throw a shelter together than it is for me to try to make a fire primitively and then have an easy way to make shelter. Now I want both, but I'll throw some sticks together, throw some branches together and find a way to keep the weather off of me. And if I can do that at a most basic level, having a fire to keep me warm, man, that is a lifesaver. And my top pick for a fire starter as of fall 2019 is this. It's the Lightning Strike Fire Starter. There you have it, my top 5 survival items as of fall 2019, connected to a wilderness survival scenario. Not only the genre of items, but the specific item that I would pick. Now I want to hear from you in the comment section. Let's hear about your top 5 survival items for a wilderness survival scenario, and you can talk about the genre or the specific item that you would pick. Thanks as always for checking out the videos here on YouTube. Please subscribe to Everyday Tactical Vids if you haven't done so already. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Instagram, Tumblr, and Vero as well. More videos coming soon. Take care.